everybody, it's Stacie Duffy here, your Denver Metro real estate resource. And we're going to talk about party wall agreements versus HOAs. So if you want to know more about HOA, I'll link to some videos up above and down below I've got one on the good, the bad, the ugly on HOAs. I spent 6 years on my HOA board for an 1,800 plus community, home community. I've owned homes without HOAs. I now own something that's kind of in between. So there's all different options here. But party walls versus HOAs are very different, and they have different applications and different purposes. So this is not going to be the, hey, all HOAs are terrible and they suck and they shouldn't exist. Go rant on that other video, because that's kind of a better place to kind of, put your thoughts on that. But I've run into a community now, a new build community, that is doing party wall agreements, and they have an HOA, but the HOA has much less responsibility and the party wall agreement covers a lot more. Usually you don't have. In metro districts is a whole other thing that I'll throw into there. I'll do a video on metro districts versus HOAs that when I do shoot it, and I posted, I'll link it up above and down below. But this particular one has all three, and they all have different purposes, but I've never seen one that actually has all three. So it's kind of weird. Party wall agreements, I'll link to a video up above and down below on specifically just what they are, right? But quick recap. Essentially, they are the, hey, we all share a wall, or, 2 people, 3 people, however many, right? They're usually smaller units, or smaller multi-unit buildings. So duplex, triplex, maybe quadplex. I've seen one that had 6 that they were like, well, we're going to do an HOA, but we're going to self-manage. Like, at what point does it get big enough that you need an HOA? And that's really where the question comes into play of what are the common elements? How much are they going to cost? How many are there? How complicated is it? And how many owners are there? Because the bigger we get, the messier things get, the more complicated they get, the more opinions you have. And the more people you have, the less people expect to take care of things themselves. Okay? Or the more people you have, the more people think someone else is going to go do it. And someone else is going to take care of it. It's not their problem. So that's kind of that gray area, right? So duplex, I think a party wall agreement is perfect, right? If you're in a duplex, so actually Stapleton, a lot of the homes up in North Stapleton, well, I guess it's Northfield. I call it North Stapleton, New Stapleton versus old one. Anyway, a lot of those have party wall agreements, but they also have an HOA for the whole city, but the HOA doesn't take care of your exterior maintenance. And that's where the exterior maintenance is kind of my beef on this situation, on this particular story. But that's where the more people you get, the messier it gets. So party wall agreements is essentially just an agreement between the 2 owners of what to do regarding the party or shared wall. Okay? So you duplex, maybe it's a side-by-side, you share one wall right down the middle. Okay? But you have siding that overlaps that. You have plumbing and electrical in that wall. You have shared structure down below that wall. Maybe your sewer lines come together and you have a shared sewer line that goes out to the street. Maybe that's on one side of the wall, or maybe that's on the other side of the wall. Maybe that's down the center of the property. Excuse me. Sorry, it's 4 o'clock and I finally got something to drink and some lunch. Anyway, it's been a busy day. So, and the roof, goes over the entire building, and, you own half the roof and they own half the roof. So what are we going to do about these things? When these need to get done, do we agree to do them at the same time? Do we file them through insurance? Do we pay them out of pocket? Do you have to paint your house the same color as me? Or can we paint the different colors and our house can be half blue and half purple? Or does it need to be all orange? All of these types of things. Who pays for what? If one person doesn't do something, what can the other person do about it? But there is no overarching authority to these other than the agreement between the 2 parties, and that is typically recorded on public record and conveys with the property. So party wall agreements are just another form of a deed restriction. I'll link to that video up above and down below. And my beef with party wall agreements is they very much remind me of the covenants and deed restrictions in that video that I talk about from the 50s, 60s, 70s single family neighborhoods that builders recorded, but there was no HOA. They were kind of the pre-HOA. And you can go in that video and I talk about the pros and cons and all that. But essentially, the hard part with all this stuff is one, people have to know what the rules are, which means they actually they all get the rules. If you get a title commitment, you get these. No one ever takes the time to read it. but you have to get them, you have to read them, you have to know and remember them, and then somebody has to follow them. And if someone doesn't follow them, what's the enforcement? Okay? So that's all these pieces to this. With an HOA, I'll get into that more in a minute, but it is very structured. It is very clear. It calls out a lot of these things. There's much more regulation. There's people in charge. There's documented rules. There's rules on how the people get to be in charge. There's rules on if they don't do what they're supposed to do, how they don't be in charge. There's rules on they can't change the rules without everybody agreeing to the changing the rules. Like there's all these things, okay? With a party wall agreement, and then enforcement, there's people that are supposed to enforce the rules. There's fines, there's management companies, there's legislation, there's all of this structure on HOAs, which is why you don't want to go there if you don't have to. But the bigger you get, the less people are going to take care of things, and the more there needs to be documented rules, consequences, and ways for people to understand them. Like people need to know the rules. And people don't read their HOA docs, and that is a whole section in our contract. It has its own dates and deadlines. You have your own opportunity to say, I don't want to buy this house because of the HOA rules. I mean, it's called out there and people still don't read them. So what are the chances that someone's going to look at their title commitment, go into the exceptions list, which they don't know what it is unless their realtor tells them, and most realtors don't because they don't get geeked out on this stuff like I do because I'm a weirdo, okay? I have title passions that I talk to my title reps about all the time. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know so much more. I was like, I am crazy, which is why my people love me, but they have to love the crazy with it, right? So you have to go through the title commitment, look at the list of exceptions, find the exception that happens to be have your party wall agreement or your deed restrictions on it. But in this case, your party wall agreement, read the party wall agreement. And then you're the only one that's done that, not the other people. So, or, maybe the other person bought the duplex, like their side of the duplex, like 3 years ago when no one's had to do the roof, and then it comes up and you're both like, I don't know what to do. What should we do? And you just talk to each other and figure it out. Great. Or you just say, screw it. I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm going to do my side because no one has read the party wall agreement. And then the self-policing piece of it, the enforcement section, most of them don't even have an enforcement section. Or if they do, the enforcement is, well, if your neighbor doesn't fix the things they're supposed to, you either can fix your side on your own. Two, you can fix their side and then take them to court to get them to pay for it. Good luck with that one, because that's a great way to make a good neighbor. This all goes back to great fences make great neighbors. So, I mean, it gets really tough, right? And that exact situation is why the more people that are involved in that. So let's say you have a 6-unit multiplex, okay? You have 6 homes that are all physically part of the same building. So you now have 5 shared walls between 6 different people, and you all share a roof, and there's 3 different siding materials. So I'm getting into my little crazy story that I'll do a whole nother video on. But there's, it just gets messy. And then the insurance policy, maybe one person wants to go through their insurance. The other person's like, okay, well, I'll file an insurance claim. Oh, wait, I only have actual cash value coverage instead of a full replacement policy. And so I have to pay $4,000 out of my pocket to fix my roof. And I don't have that right now, so I can't do it. Okay, well, in party wall agreement, maybe it actually says, which is crazy, but this one did. Because it's new, it's not older. Older ones are really simple. The new one, this one was 17 pages. Typically, older ones are, 2, 3, 4. I've seen like 6 pages, something like that, but usually pretty short because it's a duplex. It's like, hey guys, we share a wall. Basics, don't be an idiot. Don't put a hole through the wall. If something breaks inside of the wall, we split the cost. Okay, you do your roof, I'll do my roof, and let's just paint the house the same color and make sure we can all get on the same page. They're simple, right? Less people, less shared walls, less complexities. But with this one, it's like, okay, well, everybody has to have insurance that covers at least these things, but it's a party wall agreement. And so it says, oh, well, any neighbor can ask you for proof of your insurance to make sure you have what you're supposed to. And you have to give it to them within 30 days. Okay, well, first of all, no one's going to like that neighbor, if anyone's even willing to be that neighbor. And 2, no one has probably even read that they could be that neighbor because they didn't read the docs in the first place. And then people aren't going to read it, so they're not going to have the right insurance policy, and then they're going to be in that situation. Like, it's way too many holes. It's a Swiss cheese situation. And you're just walking on there and you're going to fall through something. Like, it's not a very robust system, which is why the HOAs have a place for larger communities that have more things that need to be taken care of, more people involved. And that's why your HOA fees on, right now it's what, mid July 2022. Maybe your HOA fees on a townhome that's, 3 stories tall that has 150 units in the complex, and the complex takes care of everything, might be $300 a month. Okay. But you're not having to paint siding or replace it. You're not having to, fix the caulking or the stucco or anything on the side of the house. You're not having to fix, the awning over the windows that the builder added that's super cute and pretty, but tends to fall off, or, catches a lot of snow in the snow load, or you're not adding ice melt strips to it because it's north facing and now it drips over the walkway and now you have a problem. Like, there's all these weird, the roof issues that come up. I mean, there's all these things that come up. Okay. And the more things there are, the more people there are, the more physical property to maintain, and the more bills to pay to keep that maintained, the harder it is to do that with the party wall agreement, where everybody's just supposed to play in the sandbox together really well. And if something doesn't work, then they can call the cops or go to court. Because those people have better things to do than deal with your minuscule neighborly dispute, right? Hence why the HOAs exist. So that's just my thought. I mean, in this personal opinion, right? It's worth what you paid for it. Hopefully you're not wasting too much of your time on this. You can skip through, right? I'm talking through the whole thing. You can skip through and watch whatever you want. But HOAs have a function, and there is a reason that neighborhoods with HOAs that are well managed and effective and maintained and everything else, a lot of times they maintain their property values more than places that don't, because it is the set of rules that everybody said, yep, I know what I'm buying into. I pay every month, so it's not like I can act like it doesn't exist. I can just ignore it. I know it's there because I'm paying somebody to do something. So things happen. And there's accountability, and the HOA can say, hey, if you don't pay your bills, we have some recourse here without having to call the cops or take you to court or something like that. The taking to court happens a lot. But anyway, there's documented structure and steps and process, but there's also legal rules and regulations and challenges and budgets and money and elections and all kinds of things that play into that. So there's this area in the middle, and I would say that middle is probably anywhere between like 5 and 30. I mean, even 30 is a little much. I've dealt with HOA complexes that are only like 16 units, which whenever I have a buyer that wants to go buy one of those, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing, because you can get people to have opinions on that. The bigger it is, like I mentioned before, the bigger it is and the more people there are, the more everyone thinks someone else is going to handle it. Okay? So there's this weird gray area, but just understand, if you have a party wall agreement, please read it. If you have a shared wall, ask about your party wall agreement. You probably have one. It was probably in your title commitment, and it's probably recorded. You can do a public record search and probably go find it. I have run into some properties in the Denver metro area that don't have these for like shared garages, where they're like 2 separate houses, but the garage is split between the 2 property lines, and like one person gets one side, one person gets the other. Things like that. I have run into properties that don't have party wall agreements for those, or shared yards is another thing. Like, hey, it's 3 houses and we all share a yard. What are the rules there? Like, can we put up a fence? Can we not put up a fence? Or, can your dog run everywhere? Like, who's going to pay to mow it? How are we going to do this? Okay. So but please understand, you need to know how those things are going to be handled, and there's documents for that. And the harder it is and the more people there are, the messier it's going to be, and the less people are going to read them, and the more it's all going to go to shit in 20 years. Like, it's just going to happen. And so the fact that I see this on new builds, that's frustrating for me. So I'll talk about that in the story. I'll link it up above and down below. When I shoot it, it's going to be this long, crazy rant. I'm probably going to be wearing the same outfit because my kids are not in the house. So I'm going to get this done while it's still top of mind for me. But anyway, just a few, tidbits here on kind of what they are, one versus the other. I'll do another one versus Metro District. Like I mentioned, when I do, I'll put that down below too, because that's a whole different, can of worms. So if you're liking my videos, please hit the like button if this was helpful for you. It'll help other people find it if they're in some weird niche situation where it's hit the fan for you and you're doing some researching and you ran across this, because that's usually when people run across my stuff and they're like, man, I wish somebody would have told me that before. So if you need someone to tell you that before and you're in the Denver metro area, please reach out to me. My contact information is down below. I love to educate my buyers. It is not my decision on whether or not you buy these properties. It is my decision it is my job to help you understand pros and cons and the information you need to make an educated decision. Okay. My buyer, for example, she decided to buy it, even though we have all this stuff going on with party wall agreements versus HOAs versus whatever. And I was like, hey, this come year 1820, this is going to be a mess. And she's like, that's cool. I don't think I'm going to live there long. I was like, awesome. Then it might actually be a good idea, you know? So anyway, if you need a realtor in another area that can help you with this detail, with the nitty gritty, that kind of stuff, I have an amazing network of people. I'm pretty picky on my network. So feel free to reach out to me. I have a form down below. You can put some information in. I'll make a match for you, or hopefully give you a couple of matches, and you can go interview agents, because I'll always say you should be interviewing agents. Okay. So anyway, thanks so much for the time, and y'all have a good one.